Hello everyone, I'm Chloe Johnson and welcome to this Fresh Business Thinking webinar series, Lockdown Learning for Businesses, supported by BT. Fresh Business Thinking are proud to be a part of Skills for Tomorrow from BT, which is helping 10 million people in the UK make the most of life in a digital world. Working with us and other leading digital skills, enterprise and community organisations, BT have created and collated some of the best advice, information and support in one easy place. With everything in one place, it's easy for anyone to access our webinars, as well as discover other ways their family and friends can grow their confidence and skills to make the most of tech. All it takes to get started is to visit www.bt.com/skills for tomorrow. Coronavirus has been a real challenge for small businesses and entrepreneurs across the UK. At Fresh Business Thinking, we're used to putting on events, sharing expertise, and encouraging and supporting networking. Throughout the pandemic, we knew this simply couldn't just stop. Perhaps more than ever, this is a time when as a business community, we need to come together and support one another. And we're lucky enough to work with organisations and individuals who are passionate about supporting entrepreneurs during this difficult time. One of those is our speaker today, Rachel Horton. Rachel is responsible for the strategic growth and day-to-day management of Business Moves Group. She is a company-wide mentor and change agent in the business and thrives on decision-making and innovation. Joining Rachel will be Joe Sutherland, a communications specialist and managing director of Magenta Associates. Joe helps organisations in the built environment sector to communicate better with their target audience. Joe and Rachel are each other's mentors. As two female MDs trying to keep a brave face on during this pandemic, they've got close during their shared experience, finding each other's support both inspiring and reassuring. And that's what today is all about. Today, they will reflect on the impact of leadership on resilience and how Rachel's team responded to the challenges by finding new levels of openness, empathy, and honesty. Rachel will also consider how these positive changes can be maintained even as workplaces start to reopen and go back to normal. Rachel and Joe will be talking for around 40 minutes and then we'll have some time for a Q&A. If you do have any questions, you can leave them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and we'll do our best to get to them later on in the session. That's all from me for now and I'll pass over to you, Rachel and Joe.
Thank you, Chloe. Fresh Business Thinking. Thanks for having us. And hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We thought this particular topic would work best as a conversation rather than a presentation. And that's why I'm here, gate crashing this session. So as Chloe's mentioned, Rachel and I have become kind of each other's mentors, all-round cheerleaders really over the last few months. And this webinar today, How to Build a Resilient Team, has come from our many conversations along the way. So we're both young-ish female MDs working in the built environment sector, a sector that has been, well, let's face it, pretty much hit pretty hard by this pandemic. And since mid-March, when Boris first sent the workplace world into a spin, we've aired our frustrations, our successes, we've laughed, we've not quite cried, but I think it might have got close a few times. And we've also turned to each other to unravel and make sense of the challenges and also the opportunities that have arisen since the outbreak first arrived on the scene. And we've both found these conversations quite inspiring, supporting and motivating. And so that's why we're here today sharing them with you. So talking about business resilience and how to build a strong team, it's quite a multifaceted topic. There's no rule book, there's no checklist, there's no one right way of doing things. And we're quite mindful that each of you out there today will have different businesses, different ways of doing things, different ways of working. And so we didn't want this to be prescriptive. We didn't want to, wag our finger and tell you what to do. We just wanted to keep it open and, like I said before, turn it into a conversation. And we'd really like it if you guys out there would join us and ask your questions as we go. We might not be able to see you, but we can certainly kind of involve you all in this conversation. I think it's a really important one to be had. So on that note, Rachel, as someone who's been a leader for quite a long time now, and someone who I, turn to for advice pretty much on a weekly basis, I'm going to hand the reins over to you. And so let's kick off then with the first question. So why is adaptability and resilience crucial in a crisis?
I think a crisis is a time of intense stress or intense danger. And looking at the most recent crisis that we're all going through, it has both of those things. And it has them on so many levels, both personal stress, personal health concerns, personal well-being concerns, as well as business concerns and business welfare concerns. So having a team that are able to adapt, be agile and are resilient is absolute key to steering through this process, and knowing that your team are aware that you're there and that you're giving them guidance. Leadership is so critical in this time. Generally under stress, we all can act a little bit bizarrely. We can do random things, or we can put our heads down and do nothing. So having an adaptable, agile team is great, but they have to be heading towards a goal. And I think that's where really strong leadership comes in. How you explain what that goal is and what size of the chunks you give at each point depends on the crisis and depends on the team. But I do think it's really important that to have the adaptability and have a team that feel empowered to change within the remit of what the goal is super, super important. So as a leader, you've got to communicate what it is that you're trying to achieve, why you need the adaptability, what the benefits of that adaptability and that change is going to be, and also, really importantly, what the risk of doing nothing is.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've talked, today we're talking about, how to make a resilient team. Let's break that down a bit then. So what makes for a strong and resilient team? What would you say are the ingredients of that?
So many levels on what makes a strong and resilient team. But I think it comes from the very first interaction that somebody has with your organisation. So before you've even put out a recruitment exercise, what's your brand? What's the perception of you as an organisation? Because you want to attract people who are attracted to your reputation, to your brand. So it's not something that you can create because you're in a crisis. You can't just create a resilient team. It's something that comes from your embedded culture and trust between you and your team, creating a safe place where they can be honest and open about where they are, to sharing wins, to sharing goals, and more than anything, to take in ideas. Being a leader can be a really, really lonely place. As we know, Jo, that's why we speak all the time. Sometimes you need to be able to bounce ideas off each other. And we all have teams of talent that are probably, it's a bit like everybody shouting at the TV when the football's on. Everybody's got a really good idea, and embracing those ideas and bringing them in helps to build that resilience and helps to build that team that trust that you don't just make arbitrary decisions. You really are understanding the impact of those decisions, both on the business, but also on the people that are stakeholders within that business, the employees, the families that rely on that breadwinner. And I think that's the key, that it's a two-sided affair.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And you've talked a lot about trust and building trust with the team. What other ingredients are there for a resilient team? And in the past, you've mentioned, it's about kind of being courageous to show your ideas and to step into the arena, and also loyalty comes with that as well. So can you talk a little bit more about those components to a resilient team?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to know that if you're going to step into the arena, which is, as you know, one of my favorite quotes, but if you're going to step into the arena and you're going to step in there with people, that those people have got your back, and that is a two-way street. you need to know that if you're going to drop the ball, somebody else is going to catch it. And actually, they're probably aware that you're going to catch it before you've dropped it. There are so many layers to running a business. It's not just about what goes on in your business. It's about what's going on in your clients' businesses, understanding those changing trends and how they're impacting your team. The behaviours that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis aren't just the behaviours from within your own organisation. And knowing that they've got you there, their team members there, to share those thoughts with, to explore solutions with, that's really important.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And, you know, we're talking about the importance of communication here. So how does, and you've touched on this already, but how does a resilient team, and feel free to use examples from Business Moves Group, but how does a resilient team work together and communicate during a crisis, or and beyond a crisis, actually, come to that?
Well, I think there's the formal approach, which we absolutely set up as soon as all of this started to kick off, and you know, it was changing daily. We very quickly identified a business resilience team, which was quite small, 6 people. We set that team up. It was very structured, very formal. We're going to meet every day virtually. We're going to have conversations about what we need to do, how we need to adapt. We gave each of those 6 people teams within the organisation that they would become cheerleaders for, that they would be checking in with on a day-to-day basis. So there's that formal side of things, that this is what we need to do, this is how we're going to get there, this is how we're going to communicate. But there's the informal side of it as well, which is the really, I don't know how you create that. I mean, I've been here for 22 years. So a lot of that feels very natural to me. I've grown up with the people that I work with, and I've developed my skills as I've grown up with them. So that all kind of feels really close in here, that I know the teams and I know how they tick, and people coming in hopefully find that quite a sort of warm hug of an environment to come into. Or maybe they feel like it's stepping into someone's front room at a family gathering. But, you know, you need to be able to pull people in to that. But the informal side of it, the little phone calls that are happening, the reaching out that's taken place. I'm not going to go into details because they can be quite sensitive. But during this period, we've had bereavements happen to team members, both through COVID and both non-COVID related. And we've had some mental health issues amongst some of our team. And they've used the informal methods, the WhatsApp groups and their cheerleaders to reach out to and to say, I'm not doing very well. This has happened, or this is about to happen, and I need help. And seeing how that team just were there, and that the confidence to come forward and say, I'm really struggling. One person lost 2 very close family members during the COVID period, and was under extreme personal stress outside of business. That, coupled with being in a world where there's fear and concern every day about people losing their jobs, was creating a lot of angst for this individual. But we'd created an environment at BMG where he was able to just pick up the phone to me and say, can you help? I have this issue and this is what I would like. And that really, as sad as that whole episode is, it gives me great confidence that we are fostering that resilience, that camaraderie, and all of those words that I talk about on a regular basis are actually true, and they're not just words. They really are. It is embedded in the business at every level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think when we talk about building resilient teams, perhaps the default thinking is, okay, so the business can survive, so the business can build, the kind of commercial element of resilience, and bouncing back and bouncing forward is what we think, when actually emotional resilience within a team and within the leadership as well is probably just as important, especially as what you said, Rachel, where people are experiencing the anxiety of what's going on. They might be losing family members, they might be worried about their health, and actually the leader's role in that kind of emotional resilience as well, which brings me on to kind of, let's talk a bit about the emotional side of this. How have you found, I know you found some of these situations quite emotional. Do you think there's a place for emotion in this type of leadership? Do you think it's okay to show your kind of, your true feelings? Talk us through that.
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. And that's quite a new thing for me as a female leader in a very male dominated business, and also being almost a whole generation younger than most of the senior leadership team when I started. Emotion was not something I thought I could share. It was hardcore. So it's quite a new thing for me. I've developed it over the course of my career. But if I can give you an example, Jo, of how that emotional side of running a business and leading a team has really paid dividends to us as an organisation, is COVID related. As we were coming through February into early March, offices were closing down, businesses were sending hundreds, thousands of people home from offices in Canary Wharf. Our projects were being cancelled. So we'd gone from having what looked like a really healthy projected quarter to a period of uncertainty. We really just didn't know, and it was changing daily, and we knew we had to make changes in the business. At this stage, there was no announcements around furlough or business support. It was all about reaching out and seeing what we could do as a business. So after some consideration, some talks with my senior leadership team, the only option I felt I had at that point was to reach out to everybody in the business and ask them all to take a 40% cut in hours, 40% cut in pay, until we knew what was happening. For me to ask that of people, and this was across the board, there was no conversations about it'll be this team of people but not this team of people, all the way across. But to ask that of people is a bloody big ask, and I felt really awful about asking it. And I was very, very passionate about the fact that if I'm going to ask this, I have to ask everybody at the same time. It has to be out there. And I was very emotional about it. So I got the communication out, and the response was phenomenal. Everybody said, absolutely not a problem. But some people went so far as to say, absolutely not a problem, and I will work 7 days a week for 60% if that's what we need to do. It was absolutely overwhelming, and I do find it hard to not show that pride, that emotion. So there'd been a big build up to me asking this question, and then I was completely bowled over by the level of love, really, that came from everybody that works for the organisation back. Within a day or two, furlough was announced. So I didn't have to do any of that. And there's a part of me that thinks maybe I should have waited. But there was no idea that this might happen or not at the time. But actually what it's done, it's humanised me a little bit more. And it's humanised the team a little bit more. And I think overall, it's a real positive. And it showed that we were all in it together. and it was a major challenge to share, and it wasn't great news. But the flip side of that now is that we are sharing all of the wins as we go along, which makes for good news stories, good positivity. And I'm not just talking about wins that, oh, we've won this contract or we've won that, but even the smallest wins to share with the team, and just making sure that they are continually involved, whether they're furloughed, whether they're working from home, whether they're in the offices or out on client sites. Everybody's communicated to, and there's a real feeling that the group hug, I guess, is continuing.
Yeah, it sounds like you've grown a lot closer as a team because of what's happened. And I think there's other organisations out there and other business leaders I'm in touch with that have said the same thing. It's sort of like the barriers are down. You know, we're looking into people's living rooms. You can see mine there with my balloon in the background. You know, we're in each other's homes, and those barriers that maybe permeated our working lives before this pandemic are slowly dismantling. Not to the point of, you know, anarchy or anything like that, but just people are letting each other in more. I think it's really interesting what you were saying, Rachel, about you used to be, you didn't used to have, you know, bring emotions into the workplace, and you've changed recently after being in the business for, you know, 2 decades. Whereas I think most people would assume actually you do it the other way around. Perhaps you're quite emotional to start with, and then you train yourself to be more assertive and this, that, and the other. But I find your journey really interesting because it's almost like you started, you know, not with a front, but with a certain mask to kind of, you know, in this male-dominated industry of ours, this certain idea of what a leader should be like, particularly as a woman in business as well, that we should, you know, strip emotion out of it. And actually the fact that you've recognised strength in that warmth and in that approach, you know, this far into your career, I think that's really remarkable.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean to say that I'm not still assertive, but I think that I handle bad news a lot better than I used to. It takes a lot of confidence to be able to project bad news or uncomfortable news in a way with empathy, because you know it's changing people's lives or has an impact on their lives. And I think when I was younger, the way to deal with that was, well, it is what it is, and I would be out of there as quick as I could because I didn't know how to deal with the return of that emotion, or maybe didn't have the confidence to be challenged. Why is it like this? Why are you doing that? Why are you making these decisions? So I think some of it comes from experience and learning how to handle yourselves, and some of it comes from personal experience and growth within the team. I think it's a real luxury that I've been in this business for 22 years. I think it's amazing that I joined a company in a very junior position, and diversity and inclusion wasn't even really a thing then. So I didn't, you know, feel like I was breaking any ground. But actually, the current chairman, Simon Darville, he recognised in me that I could add value to the business, and that having that diversity from a male-dominated board would be a good thing. And he's invested in that, and he's now allowed me to invest in the people that I want to invest in the team and further that diversity. So, you know, I just came into it, and then I got to grow with these people and see their lives change, see them go through divorces, see their careers progress, see them leave the business, have children, come back. You know, all of these different things. So that is a luxury, to have that level of closeness and growth within a team, that maybe as a leader, if I was walking into a new business and then we went through a crisis, I would maybe have to handle things slightly differently. But I'm glad that I'm where I am.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've had a few questions in, so actually I might mix up the order a little bit and turn to some of our audience members and their questions. So thanks guys for getting involved. Let me scan. Oh, there's a few more coming in now. My eyes have just gone. Okay, well, we've just talked about emotions and communication that goes with it. So I've got a question here from anonymous attendee. Sorry, I can't say your name. But how honest should I be with my team about the struggles my business is having? So obviously that's quite a broad question, and it depends on the business and depends on the environment. But Rachel, what are your thoughts on that?
I think if you've got a team of people that you really trust in, I'm very lucky. I've got a team of a leadership team who I can talk to and share the real deep concerns. And I've also got a chairman who I can be incredibly open with. I don't think it's necessarily right to share the whole picture with your team, but I think it's absolutely okay to let them know that there are concerns, but that you have a plan. And then to reach out to those people that you trust in your team and get their thoughts on the plan and get them to buy into it or to help you shape it. And then when you're in a position that you know what the plan is, that maybe then is the time to share more. But right now, if you're really concerned and you're having worries about how much to share, I would say really think about what your vision is first. Get some investment from other opinions, from those that you do trust, and then share the plan with some of the underlying concerns with it.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree with that. So we've got a few other questions that have come in here. So you spoke about staff losing members of their family and kind of the fact that he felt safe to reach out to you and had that safe space in which to say how he was doing. So I think someone here on the webinars worried about this for their own team. So they've asked, how can I help them get through this tough time? Should I speak with them? If so, how often? What advice do you have for perhaps leaders who perhaps aren't as close to their employees and perhaps there isn't that conversation already happening?
Well, I may answer that from two sides. One is from a person who's experienced bereavement myself whilst running the business and seeing how the business reacted to me and what worked and what didn't work while I was going through that. And the other side is from me as a leader helping others. On a personal basis, I found some questions a little bit overwhelming. If they were, I'm here if you need me, or let me know if you need anything. I found that a little bit overwhelming and almost as if it added pressure as I was going through that period of time, because it was sort of the onus was on me to let people know what I needed. So I think if you've got people in your, from a business perspective, if you've got people in your team that you know are going through an uncomfortable time, then I'm a big advocate of the parallel conversation and to just let it flow. It's very difficult right now because everything has to be face to face. You can't walk side by side, and you might be a little bit geographically separate from your colleagues. But I would really advocate just having a chat with no real agenda, but just to let them talk and just create that safe space. And if they want to share and they want to ask for help, then the confidence will build if those conversations are fairly regular, but without really asking direct questions about it, would be my advice.
Yeah, we've got another question in along those lines from John. Hi, John. How would you handle teams that have fractured due to remote working, emphasising previously existing personal issues that were not so obvious when working physically close? Have you had any experience of that, or how the virtual and the physical world has actually made managing health and wellness with the teams that little bit more difficult or that little bit more easy, depending on which way you look at it?
I think we've always worked in quite a remote way. We're spread out, we're all over the UK. So, we've got teams in Glasgow, teams in London. So I wouldn't always have had a very one-to-one relationship with everybody, as in I'd pass them in the corridor. So the whole virtual conversations has not really changed. That's always been a thing for us. But what has changed is that when we ask somebody how they're doing now, we really mean it. Pre-COVID, how you doing was, a precursor to getting on with the real conversation. It wasn't always a, how are you?
Yeah,
and I think that, it's a big difference now. And so I'm much more aware of the well-being, mindfulness, people's health now than I was perhaps 6 or 7 months ago. These have always been part of our agenda for mental health and for checking in with each other. But I just think it's more obvious now. It's more of a thing. So yeah, I just think it's a more genuine question when I'm asking it now than it perhaps was. And I think the answers are more honest. If I'd have asked my team in, I don't know, Glasgow, Leeds, Manchester, wherever, how are you doing? Their response 12 months ago would have been, yeah, great, we've won this contract, we're on target, we've hit all our KPIs, blah, 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 blah. If I ask that question now, it's, yeah, I'm doing okay, I've had a good day, or actually going a bit stir crazy, or whatever it may be. But it's much more about them now. The answer is much more honest and less about targets, KPIs and ratios.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We found the same at Magenta, actually. One more question from the audience, and we'll go back to the original agenda, and then we'll go back to the other questions later on, guys. So I promise you'll all get a turn, presuming we don't run out of time. So this is, again, related. So someone has said, as we have a small team, I notice that if one person is having a bad mental health day or period, that it can really have a knock-on effect with the rest of the team. What can I do to support the individuals and the team in question when there is people going through kind of difficult times or difficult days? So yeah, that's related and about the kind of totality of your team.
Yeah, we have a small team, and who worked very, very, very closely together. They're all in different parts of the country, but they all worked really closely together. And you're absolutely right. When one of them was having a bad day, it would either show itself in the fact that everybody was a little bit down and flat, or it would show itself in productivity, that, oh, I'm having a terrible day today, this isn't working for me. Oh no, me either. And it almost became a bit of a right that it's okay because one person's having a bad day. So the way I sort of dealt with that was to make sure that I'm having one-to-ones with every member of that team, as well as the group sessions. And that's not about sharing each other's personal information or what everybody's doing, but it was about me investing time to make sure that everybody was doing okay and giving them the space that they needed. If they needed to not be around the team that particular day, then that's okay. But actually, if they did need to be part of the team, but they needed a focus or jolly things up. So I think you have to take each case by case situation. But I certainly think investing some of your time into people as individuals as well as a team is a really positive thing to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So at Magenta Associates, so we've got we're a creative PR and communications agency. So everyone who works for the company is, I'm kind of blanket spreading it here, but basically most people love being around other people, and we want to bounce ideas off of each other, and we're a very close-knit team. So when one person is having a bad time, we can really sense it. We're kind of very in tune with each other, even though for the last 3 to 4 months we've been working apart. Now that we've got the opportunity to meet face to face sometimes, albeit with social distancing in the mix, our wellbeing manager is really thinking about the ways we can bring people together. So obviously not everybody can meet in person, but those that can, we're facilitating that in work time between Mondays and Fridays. We're doing a lot more face-to-face stuff. We're running our own like more fun and creative virtual sessions where we won't necessarily talk about work, but we might be talking about issues related to the world of work. So we specialize in workplace. So, you know, we might do a brainstorm on all the different things that are happening, the future of the office, is the office dead, and all of that stuff, and get people involved in that way. And, you know, to answer this question, we found that can really help kind of bridge that gap and keep that energy up, even when obviously there are still people within the business who are struggling with all various different things. But just having that community spirit, kind of facilitating that community spirit, and those huddles, those meets, virtually or otherwise, can really help with build that bridge, I think. So that's from our own experience. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about kind of keeping the energy up, looking after each other. I think the last few months has been, you know, we've been living in crisis. We've been, you know, just trying to survive. And perhaps now the tide is, I sound like Boris, but the tide is slowly turning. And now we're looking forward, we're building. Albeit there are still some worries and concerns out there. You know, every time you turn on the news, there's something about redundancies, the economy, the recession, etc. So with all of that in mind, Rachel, how do you engage and empower people to ensure that motivation and momentum doesn't dip, particularly when there are so many unknowns still on the horizon?
It goes back to sharing the wins. And I know I'm always saying it, but communication is absolutely key, and it is. But also, right when we very first started speaking to each other on this webinar, we spoke about the vision. And okay, it's had to change a few times through COVID, but that's still really important. And keeping that team motivated is about continually letting them know where we are on that journey, why we're taking a different fork, whether we take a different fork or not. But that has really played a crucial role in keeping everybody engaged. I'm very aware that I am not day to day doing the job that the people I employ are doing. So it's great me having a vision and a strategy that I want to implement, but actually their input into that is critical, because I don't know all of the quirks and specifics of what happens. So as we're building ourselves back for the next phase, we're really doing that as this is what I want to achieve. Be part of this. Come on the journey with me. Tell me where I'm missing. What am I missing? And it's been really, really powerful and exciting. And I think we have a team of people in the business right now who are really super enthusiastic. They can see that they are part of a business that is going to thrive. They're part of a business that's not sat with their head down hoping this all will go away. They're part of a business who's really being proactive and moving, excuse the pun, but moving the business forward.
No, absolutely. And I think this is a good time to go back to one of our audience questions, actually, which is, as a business owner, what could I do to help my team grow their skills? So we've talked about bringing people together and making sure they're part of the journey and that they know what the vision is and they're part of that and they're empowered to belong to that movement. But what about skill development, especially now when most of us are working remotely? What as a leader can we do to improve skills within our teams?
It's a really interesting question, because it's one of the things that, as part of my journey that I'm taking us on, is exactly that. We're an established business, sort of 35, 40 years worth of business. And a lot of people are doing jobs because that's the way they've always done them. or they've got parts of their job that they don't particularly enjoy. And what this has allowed us to do is to have those conversations and to also really see the skills that we perhaps didn't know existed, because we've dealt with things on a much smaller team through the lockdown period. So I would say really look at what skills are currently there and which ones you want to enhance. What skills do you want to enhance? Does it involve going on a training course, or does it really involve having a conversation with people and knowing that they've got a lot more to give in a particular area, and maybe adapting their role, maybe putting them with a mentor? Mentoring is a huge thing for me, and it's a huge thing for Business Moves Group. And we've seen people go through all of the ranks in the business because they've been mentored and they've had a buddy program. So I think it starts with a conversation and an understanding of what skills you'd like to see them develop and what skills they'd like to see develop. And then if funding for training courses isn't really an option right now, look at putting a mentoring scheme in place or a buddying up scheme in place, and build the confidence first and let them step into it.
Yeah, that's a great shout. And I've got another audience question here as well. So what should I be doing to aid the process of bringing back my staff to the workplace once I bring them back from furlough leave? And actually, Rachel's probably the best person to talk to about this, because her business is all about change management and supporting organisations through that change. So yeah, Rachel, what should we be thinking about with back to work, particularly for the furloughed team who are now returning to the office or to wherever they may be working moving forward?
It's a challenge. And it is change management. And I think it's something that we may struggle with at Business Moves too. We have some teams that are very comfortable being on furlough and are very nervous about returning to the workplace. And we have some teams that we're not ready to unfurlough just yet, who are desperate to get back to the workplace. So it's a really fine balance. And really the only thing that we can really control within that balance is the assessing the situation, and then really understanding why people are concerned. Because I think for some of our team in particular, it goes further than their own personal concerns about coming back to the office. It's because they're living with shielded family members. They're concerned about coming back to the office. Their roles aren't. Most of our employees don't work in our office. They work in our clients' offices, moving things and changing things. So it's quite a frightening space for them to come back. So all that we've been doing really is just understanding who's ready to come back, and phasing that program of the return to work based on which employees are ready and really keen, and what the business needs. Because we're certainly not in a position to go, great, we'll just unfurlough everybody and we'll all start afresh on the 1st of August. It is a phased step for us, and we can only really do that by understanding, first and foremost, client requirements and employee requirements.
No, absolutely. And if anyone out there, with Magenta, we've just produced a guide on communicating the return to the office or back to work, and all the things you should be thinking about, just from a employee anxiety perspective. Communications do's and don'ts in this time. So if that's of interest, please let me know, or Fresh Business Thinking know, and I'll send that across to you, and that might be quite helpful as well. Okay, so with the last 10 minutes we've got left, let's have a little kind of look at what might be lying ahead then. So there are whispers that we're on the cusp of a recession. And I know, Rachel, you've witnessed one the last time you were an MD then, back in 2007, 2008. So what lessons did you learn then that you will apply now?
Oh my word, so many lessons. I literally took over as managing director 2 weeks before the banks crashed. So it was a real baptism of fire for me, so to speak. So I spoke earlier about how I've retrospectively learned about that empathy and the communicating part of being a leader. But some of the things that I did then have been fantastic for our business, and they're the same sort of things that I'm applying now. It's about thinking about what the opportunities are from this. Back then, the banks were failing. A lot of banks were having to offload a lot of their estate. Some of the banks were merging, which meant they'd got 2 of everything. So back then we developed a furniture management program, which helped us accelerate our plans for a really sustainable and green furniture management product for waste. And it wasn't just great for us because it was a new revenue stream, but it also was great for our clients and allowed us to show innovation. For one client, we saved them £700,000 a year for about 5 years while they went through these changes by managing their furniture product. So it's that level of thinking that we applied then to seeing that, you know, our world was changing completely. We have a lot of financial clients then, and we do now. Our world was changing then. We looked at the opportunities and we created some innovative solutions that would service the clients, but also would help us as an organisation. That's exactly what we're doing today. We started working in the change management arena a couple of years ago. Moves have got less and less over the years. People don't generally move heaps of stuff now. You know, most people are laptop and don't carry much paperwork. So we started that process a couple of years ago, and this has again accelerated some of those plans for how we're changing as a business. We'll always be a moving company. It's our core, it's at the heart of what we do. But actually our clients need more than just that. And this has given us a real good opportunity to put those things in motion. So lessons learned, change the way I behave as a leader. To be fair, back then, I didn't have any experience really of being a leader. Certainly not of a whole organisation. So I've maybe softened a little over the last 12 years or so. But those principles have been innovative, and adapting to the changing circumstances remain the same, I believe.
Okay, cool. We've got 2 more questions. We're going to end on a high, on a positive, but I've got an audience question from Margaret. Hello, Margaret. Thanks for contributing. So, you know, without being all doom and gloom, let's have a think about where we are currently. So Margaret says that she's been hindered by a lack of access to some of the services that she needs business-wise, and that she's hoping that some of those services will be accessible as more businesses are reopening. So that's one consideration, I guess, that we have to have in our heads. But her question is, how will businesses cope if there is a second wave? What contingencies are out there to prevent us from a second wave as well? So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? I know we all sit here and think, oh no, we can't deal with a second wave, but where there's a will, there's a way, and we've got through it once, we'll get through it again. But yeah, Rachel, what are your thoughts on that one?
I think a second wave, if we have one, is not going to be a repeat of wave 1, because wave 1 was new. We'd never had this before. We were all frightened. It was a big thing, you know, and it was binary. Lock your doors, stay at home, don't go out. That's it. If we have a second wave this time, we've all done that once. And then we've had some freedom. And I'm not sure as a country that the same level of commitment to lockdown will happen if wave 2 approaches. I think businesses across the country are rooting for the economy to pick back up. You know, we need businesses to open, we need people to go to shops, we need that footfall. And I'm not sure that people are going to take it quite so effectively if wave 2 happens.
Yeah,
that's just my personal opinion. I just suspect that people go, wow, I'll take my chances.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And yeah, just to add to that point, Margaret, I think with the infrastructure we've got in place now and the testing system, you know, track and trace, and the fact that we haven't got a furlough scheme round 2, you know, it's been made very clear that is the case. Business will find a way. I think look at what's already happened. There's been so much innovation in different sectors. I mean, even built environment, the sector that Rachel and I are in, it's, you know, it's property, it's about walls, but it's actually transcended the physical walls of the offices or the hospitals or wherever it might be. It's transcended that, and it's looked beyond, and the kind of professions changed accordingly. So, and the same for other sectors. So I think we can look to this as an opportunity and learn some lessons and just keep going and keep applying what we've learned along the way. So to conclude then, the last question is, so fresh business thinking attracts, you know, fresh business leaders. We've got lots of forward-thinking leaders, you know, joining us on the webinar today, and a lot more out there. So what should forward-thinking business leaders be doing right now, from today? What should we be doing to just make sure that we're ready for what lies ahead?
They should be making changes. They should be talking to their teams. They should be making difficult decisions, but they should be taking action. Doing nothing or doing the same thing over and over and over again is not going to get us through this as businesses. So business leaders, be brave, step into the arena and take the difficult decisions and take your team with you.
Cool. And prosper. We will prosper.
Yes, thrive.
How we're ending this one on. So thanks very much, everybody. I'm going to hand back to Chloe at Fresh Business Thinking, just to conclude the session and to tell you a bit more about the other webinars that are on the programme.
Rachel and Joe, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm sure our audience will agree that was a great session. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
Oh gosh. Well, just if anyone out there wants to hear more about you know, how to communicate different change, so whether it's how to communicate with furloughed employees, or how to communicate with virtual based teams, or how to communicate the back to work, please let me know. Magenta's produced many how-to guides that are freely available, so we'd be happy to share that with you if that's that's helpful moving forward. But otherwise, you're all doing a great job. I think we've got to pack our bats and high five each other. You know, we've got this through this far, and we'll continue to get through it. So yeah, keep going, everyone. That's my final words.
Yeah, I'd mirror that, Joe. I think, you know, business leaders out there that are listening to this, you are doing a great job, and it is tough and it's scary, but just be strong. You've come this far. It will get better.
Thank you both. I have included Rachel's and Joe's LinkedIn profiles in the comments if you would like to connect with them. Our next webinar in the Lockdown Learning for Business series takes place on Monday, the 3rd of August at 2 p.m. A helping hand navigating the business and legal landscape during and post-COVID-19 with Sparker Legal and Starling Bank. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's session, we'll be sending out a replay of the webinar coming at 5 p.m. today. You can find the replay and future webinars at www.freshbusinessthinking.haysummit.com or by clicking on the link in the comments section. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you again, Rachel and Joe.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.